everyone, it's September 19, 1994. I'm Jasmine, your reporter from Life News. This week we will talk about the book written by Mr. Smith, The Pacification of Primitive Tribes of Lower Niger, published in 1899. He is a district commissioner in Africa who is now 100 years old. He lives in a tribal village called Umuofia. We are happy to announce that we have him here today, live from Umuofia through Skype. Hello, Mr. Smith.
Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Smith, and I always wanted to write a book about the tribal village and that I had a great honor to be part of. And in the many years in which I had the honor to bring civilization to Africa, I learned a lot of things. And one of the things I'm going to stress in my book is that I must never attend such an undignified detail as cutting a hanged man from a tree. Such intention would give the natives a poor opinion of me. So that is the main point of my book.
So how long were you in Africa?
I lived for more than 100 years in Africa, and it was really interesting because I gained a lot of insights, and those are reflected in my book that I'm going to present today.
What are some parts of your book?
Well, I lived in Umuofia for the longest period throughout my trip in Africa, so my book is especially focused on that tribal village. And in the book, I reflect especially on the violent behavior of the tribal man, the language, and the role of women.
What are the characters that stand out to you the most?
There was a man called Okonkwo, who, as I learned from other villagers, was sent into exile for 7 years. And he just came back to his tribe again a few weeks before I arrived. And to me, he was really interesting because he thought highly of himself and he did everything possible to bring aggression towards our civilized tribes to educate other villagers. In my book, in chapter 10 to 14, I describe him and his action in detail. And I think for the reader it almost seems like a small case study of Okonkwo, and that is actually what I wanted to achieve. I wanted to allow the reader to have more insight of an average tribal man in Africa, and I also wanted to show how uncivilized those men were and that they were desperately in need for change.
So you just mentioned before that you explored the role of women in your book. Can you tell us more about the role of women in this tribal society?
Of course, I would love to. So first of all, you should know that a man can have several women, and as far as I observed it, the higher the rank of the man in the community is, the more women he can have as his wives.
Are you serious? That would be unthinkable in our society nowadays.
Yes, exactly right. It shows that those tribal people have no manners whatsoever, and men don't think about a woman as an equal being next to them. They treat women really condescending. So the general role of women is to feed the children and to cook for the man. Every woman has her own hut where she lives with her children. And when they cook the meal, there is a special order to bring the meal to the man. The first wife brings it first, and then the second wife, and so on. And that is the only time they can enter the hut of the man. They can't enter at any other occasion. And well, that man looked down on women, and women in this tribe is especially prevalent in their language. So whenever a man is weak, he's referred to be old shivering woman. Or when a man wants to insult another man, he tells him that he indeed became a woman. And to sum it up, I heard when I was talking to the man in the tribe, and they described they described it like that. No matter how prosperous a man was, if he was unable to rule his women and his children, and especially his women, he was not really a man. Well, so I think that quote really describes how they look down on women.
That sounds horrible. How can they look down on women that much? Were they never educated? Have you witnessed any violence?
Well, I could talk about the role of women in the community for this whole session, but I don't think that is the purpose of your interview, is it? So for further details, the role of women is especially discussed in chapter 5 to 8 in my book.
Let's move on. My next question is, if you ever witnessed any violence, have you ever witnessed any violence in the village?
Yes, I have. Living there for so long, you're kind of bound to have to meet some very devastating cruelties. Men are always carrying machetes around the house. Just last week, a man shot his wife right in the forehead because she forgot to cook lunch for her children.
What was it like living there for so long?
Unfortunately, after living there so long, I kind of get used of the violence occurring in the village. So after Okonkwo, which I talked earlier about, almost destroyed our whole church with his fellow friends, we had to imprison him. And after the imprisonment, the relations between the groups in the village had been really ice cold. Each member of the two groups were both walking on thin ice. I knew that my predecessor invited as many villagers to join as possible, and I kind of actually opposed that ideology. However, after they almost destroyed our church, I think more education is necessary, and the only way to help to prevent massive killing on both parts, I think I should adopt on Mr. Brown's way of running this church.
And what did you do to civilize those people more?
So what I learned is that I never should do things that gave the villagers a poor impression of myself. So when Okonkwo hanged himself on a tree, the villagers asked us if we could hang him down for them, because in their belief they can't touch a man who killed himself. However, instead of helping, I just told my advisors to do so, because the villagers wouldn't respect me anymore if I would have helped.
So, what was the most outstanding event that occurred during your stay?
I was really interested in Okonkwo. He was the one who inspired me to write my book. I wouldn't say there was a specific event that inspired me to write this book, but it was more like a series of events. So, especially Okonkwo's rebellion intrigued me. I think he was a man who opposed our influence the most, and he was very protective over his own culture. He realized that his clansmen were not willing to fight, and then he was the only one who was willing to fight for their own culture. He especially realized that when his own son converted to our church. And because of that, he felt like he was betrayed, and he kind of also was defeated, and therefore he hanged himself, which is the most crucial thing he could do, because in their beliefs, hanging or committing suicide is a sin, and his tribesmen wouldn't touch him anymore.
Alright, thank you, Mr. Smith, for participating in this interview from so far away through Skype. We've really enjoyed it, and we hope that you live longer, and good luck with your book. Thank you. And thank you guys for watching Life News. We will be back on with a new book next week.